There are people in this world whose hearts beat to a very different rhythm than the rest. Not because they chose it, but because something ancient chose them. If you're still here, if you felt something stir in you just hearing the title of this video, then you're already on the edge of remembering. You are not weak for feeling deeply. You are not broken because the world overwhelms you. You are not too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. You are one of the 0.1 a rare empath chosen one. And the truth is, the world will never fully understand you. But if you feel these signs, you don't need the world to understand you. You just need to understand yourself. Because once you do, nothing can stop you from stepping into your true power. In fact, that's exactly what the world's been afraid of. Let's start with the first sign, and it's not what you think. It's not about crying at movies or feeling people's pain. It's that you can hear the unspoken. You walk into a room, and before a single word is said, your body already knows what's going on beneath the surface. You don't even try, it just happens. You can feel the tension between two people who are pretending to smile. You can sense when someone's lying, not because of what they say, but because of what they don't say. You pick up on energy shifts like a radar, and often you've doubted yourself. You've asked, am I imagining this? But deep down, you know, you've always known. You're not just intuitive, you're encoded with a kind of emotional sonar that's almost supernatural. That's not a coincidence. That's a signature of the chosen empath. The world doesn't teach us to trust that. But that's exactly why you were born with it, to remember what others forget. The second sign is that people unload their pain on you without even realizing it. Strangers tell you their life story. Friends cry in your arms when they've never cried in front of anyone else. You've been the emotional sponge, the healer, the one everyone turns to in crisis but rarely checks in on. Why? Because your energy feels like home. Because your soul emits a frequency of safety. But here's what no one tells you. That's not just empathy. That's a coded mission. You were designed to be a living mirror, not to absorb people's wounds, but to reflect their truth. The problem is, you've likely spent most of your life thinking that your gift is a burden. You've carried guilt for not being able to fix everyone. But what if your role was never to fix but to witness? To feel in a way others can't, so the world itself could begin to heal through you. The third sign is that the world exhausts you not because you're weak, but because you're open. You feel everything. Crowded places drain you. Loud noises feel like attacks. Violent or manipulative energy affects you physically. And so you retreat not because you hate people, but because you need space to breathe, to recalibrate, to remember who you are. This isn't avoidance. This is sacred self-preservation. But society doesn't honor that. It teaches you to power through, to numb, to get over it. And yet you can't, because your nervous system is calibrated to the frequency of the soul. You're not meant to adapt to dysfunction. You're meant to disrupt it. And to do that, you need to protect your energy like a sacred temple. Because it is. Your energy is not just yours, it is a container for healing. And when you burn out, that temple collapses. The fourth sign is perhaps the hardest one to accept. You've been betrayed by the very people you tried to help. You've loved deeply. You've given without limits. You've stood by people when no one else did. And in return, you were abandoned, used, misunderstood. And it crushed you not just emotionally, but spiritually. Because you weren't just hurt, you were shaken. You began to question if your love was even real, if your empathy was a mistake. But what if I told you that this pain, this betrayal was part of your awakening? That the rare empath chosen ones are tested not through physical suffering, but through emotional crucifixion? The universe didn't allow those betrayals to destroy you. It allowed them to refine you, to teach you boundaries, to awaken discernment, to show you that your gift is sacred and sacred things must be protected. Now, I want to ask you something that only a true rare empath chosen one can answer. Have you ever looked at someone and felt their entire life flash inside your chest? Have you ever seen past the mask, the anger, the ego, and touched the innocent child inside them, even just for a second? That's not fantasy. That's not imagination. That's sight, empathic sight, the ability to perceive soul beyond personality. And if you felt that, if you've ever forgiven someone before they even apologized, or cried for someone else's pain like it was your own, then you know. You're not like the rest. You were never meant to be. This is just the beginning. Because the rare empath chosen ones don't just feel deeply, they're here to transform the emotional frequency of the planet. And in the next part, we go even deeper. We'll uncover the hidden abilities that activate once you stop suppressing your gift. You'll discover why your sensitivity is not a weakness, but a dormant power that, once awakened, can alter reality itself. Once you realize that your sensitivity is not a flaw, but an untapped force, everything begins to change. You stop apologizing for feeling too much. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. And most importantly, you stop believing that your pain was meaningless. Because pain for the rare empath chosen one is never random, it's the pressure that activates the gift. You see, your emotional depth is not just for understanding others. It's a multidimensional tool, a bridge between worlds, a key to unlocking energies that most people can't even perceive. And once you stop suppressing it, once you allow yourself to fully feel, you begin to access something extraordinary, the field of empathic alchemy. The fifth sign that you're part of the 0.1% is that your emotions don't just reflect reality, they shape it. You've probably noticed this before, but dismissed it as coincidence. When you're calm, people around you soften. When you're anxious, entire rooms become tense. When you're joyful, your energy is contagious. This is not just empathy, it's emotional energy transference. You are a frequency amplifier, a living tuning fork. And when you become conscious of this, you can begin to direct it. Your emotional energy becomes a tool of manifestation, healing, even protection. This is why, when you learn to regulate your inner state not by suppressing, but by harmonizing, you can shift the energy of entire environments. You've done this naturally your whole life. But now, you can do it with intention. Because now, you know who you are. And that's where the sixth sign comes in. You've always been drawn to the unseen. Not just spiritual teachings, but the edges of reality. You've felt energies in sacred places. You've had dreams that felt more real than waking life. You've had precognitive flashes, synchronicities that defy logic, and moments where time seemed to bend. Most people brush these off. But you've always known there was more. That veil between the world's empaths can feel it because they stand in it. You are a natural bridge between dimensions. Your emotional body is the antenna. And when you stop fearing that, when you stop thinking you're too sensitive, you begin to access deeper layers of perception. You begin to hear the whispers beneath the words, the future hidden within the now, the truth behind the illusion. This is why empaths make powerful energy readers, healers, and even visionaries. Because they don't just interpret the world, they feel its blueprint. But with great perception comes great responsibility. The seventh sign is that you feel a deep, unshakable urge to transmute pain not just in yourself, but in others. You don't want to avoid suffering. You want to understand it, heal it, liberate it. Even if you've been crushed by it, something in you still says, there must be a way through. That's the empath's sacred task, to take what is heavy, broken, chaotic, and alchemize it into insight, connection, and peace. You are an emotional alchemist. And this world, with its numbness and noise, needs that now more than ever. But here's the catch. You can only do this after you've done it for yourself. You cannot transmute what you haven't faced. That's why your life has been harder. That's why your heart has carried so much. You've been apprenticing with pain, not to become its prisoner, but to become its master. So let me ask you something now, something only a true empath will understand. Have you ever touched someone's grief so deeply that it changed you? Not because you wanted to, but because their pain entered your soul like it was always meant to be there? That's not codependence. That's not dysfunction. That's sacred resonance. It's your soul saying, this too is mine to heal. But the question is, how do you heal without drowning in what's not yours? And that's the next evolution of the empath chosen one. You must learn to distinguish between your emotions and the collectives, between compassion and entanglement, between resonance and responsibility. You're not here to carry everyone. You're here to lead energetically. And to do that, you must become emotionally sovereign. This means building boundaries not as fences, but as filters, learning to feel without absorbing, and to witness without becoming lost. This is where your true power awakens. Because once you can hold space without collapsing, you become a force of nature. You become the storm and the stillness. All of this is why the rare empath chosen ones are feared by systems of control and distortion. You can't be manipulated through lies because you feel what's real. You can't be separated from others because you feel their humanity beneath their behavior. You can't be turned into a machine because your soul refuses to numb. And this is why your power has been buried beneath layers of shame, programming, and trauma. Not because you are broken, but because your light is dangerous to the false systems trying to run the world. But now, the time of forgetting is over. You are remembering. You are not too much. You are the exact amount needed to shake this world awake. And in the next part, the final part, we go beyond signs. We step fully into the empath's mission. We reveal what happens when the 0.1% stop hiding, start leading, and begin to embody the frequency of healing across every room they walk into. This is the part most never reach, the integration, the embodiment, the real work. And it changes everything. When you finally stop apologizing for your depth, the world begins to adjust to your presence instead of the other way around. That's when you realize something monumental. You were never meant to adapt to dysfunction. You were born to disrupt it. As one of the 0.1% rare empath chosen ones, your very existence is a frequency correction. You don't have to say anything. You just walk into a space, and the energy starts to shift. That's not arrogance. That's energetic law. You've spent so much of your life trying to make others comfortable with your truth, trying to shrink your sensitivity to not overwhelm them, that you forgot. You were never here to fit in. You were here to recalibrate the collective. And now, finally, you're remembering that you're not fragile, you're formidable. Here's the paradox that most empathic beings must face. You are both the most tender and the most powerful. And those two truths don't cancel each other out. They amplify one another. Your tenderness is not weakness. It's proof that you still care in a world that numbs. Your pain is not a flaw. It's the gateway to your medicine. Your breakdowns were not failures. They were sacred initiations. You had to feel everything because you were being trained to carry frequencies that most people run from. You weren't being punished. You were being prepared. And now, you're no longer just the one who feels what others can't. You're becoming the one who holds what others can't. This is where the empath chosen ones step into their true role. You become what I call a frequency holder. You walk through a workplace, a family, a dying system, and you anchor stillness, clarity, truth. You don't need to argue. You don't need to lecture. You don't even need to be understood. Your presence speaks louder than noise. Your alignment becomes louder than your words, and people will feel it. They might not know why, but they'll calm in your presence. They'll confess things. They'll feel safe to fall apart. You're not just a person anymore. You're a field, a living transmission. But here's the challenge. People will still try to bring you back into the old paradigm. They'll try to reduce your gift to something romanticized or misunderstood. They'll say you're just an empath, or you're too emotional, or worse, you're imagining it. And you must decide in those moments whether to shrink back into silence or to stand firmly in your knowing, not to convince them, but to root yourself. This is the moment when the rare empath becomes unshakable, not because they harden, but because they anchor. You don't lose your heart. You just stop giving it away to people who don't know how to hold it. Let me ask you something only someone like you can understand. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt like you left pieces of yourself behind with that person? Have you ever poured out healing energy only to feel empty afterward, wondering if any of it even helped? That's the final lesson. You must learn to circulate your energy with intention. You are not a healing machine. You are an empathic conduit. That means you don't need to give away your essence. You channel the healing. You invite the shift, but you don't sacrifice yourself to create it. That's the old empath story, the martyr, the broken healer, the overgiver. That story ends here. Because when you truly step into this version of yourself, the anchored empath, you become something the world has rarely seen. You become emotionally sovereign, energetically clear, spiritually embodied. And that's when your full mission activates. You're no longer just reacting to energy. You're directing it. You're no longer just feeling what's wrong. You're embodying what's right. You become the example, the template, the doorway. You live in such integrity with your sensitivity that others begin to reclaim their own. You don't need to teach. Your frequency does the teaching. Your presence becomes the sermon. And now, you see why your path had to be so intense, why your emotions had to be so deep, why your betrayals had to be so sharp. Because if your heart wasn't broken open, it couldn't carry this kind of power. If your nervous system wasn't refined by pain, it couldn't detect this much truth. You are not here to be average. You are not here to blend in. You are the sacred minority, the 0.1%. And you were never meant to be understood by the masses. You were meant to reawaken them. So what does life look like when you stop apologizing for who you are? You start saying no to energy that dishonors your soul. You stop explaining your boundaries. You stop over-justifying your silence. You trust your inner knowing even if it contradicts every external voice. You create sacred space around your energy, not as a wall, but as a membrane. You choose relationships that feed your nervous system, not just your ego. You speak truth not always loudly, but always clearly. You stop rescuing people who haven't chosen to rise. You stop leaking your essence into people who don't choose responsibility. You become magnetic not because you try, but because your authenticity is now undeniable. And here's what no one tells you. When you reach this level of embodiment, the world begins to respond to you differently. Opportunities that drained you before now align with grace. People who once triggered you now disappear or shift. You're no longer swimming upstream. You're moving with the current of your own frequency. You don't chase. You attract. You don't react. You respond. You don't hustle. You harmonize. And in that state, miracles become normal. Synchronicity becomes daily. Peace becomes your baseline not because life is perfect, but because you are no longer abandoning yourself to manage it. So I want to leave you with this final question, the deepest one of all. What would your life look like if you never again apologized for the way your soul was wired? How would you move? Who would you love? What would you create? How would you show up if you really knew that your sensitivity was not your weakness, but your weapon? That your empathy was not your wound, but your witness? This isn't just a video. This is a remembering, a homecoming, a sacred mirror held up to the part of you that's always felt like too much, too deep, too intense. And now you see the truth. You are not too much. You are exactly enough to transmute a world that has forgotten how to feel. You are one of the 0.1% rare empath chosen ones. If you've made it this far, it's not by accident. It means something ancient in your DNA has been activated. Something in your soul has finally said, yes, I remember. And now that you've remembered, there's no going back to a life of numbing, shrinking, or pretending. The time for hiding your sensitivity is over. The time for apologizing for your depth, your feeling, your insight, that time has died. What comes next is not just a continuation of your journey, it's a revolution of your identity. We live in a world where true empaths are not just rare, they're essential. The planet is aching with untold grief, suppressed emotion, generational trauma, and disconnected hearts. And those of us who truly feel, are the ones who can bring it back into harmony. But to do that, we must walk fully as who we are. Not half-lit, not half-honest. Fully, authentically, boldly, not loud in words, but loud in frequency. You don't need a platform. You don't need a brand. You just need to walk into the world with your nervous system intact, your emotional truth embodied, and your soul unashamed. That's the real mission. And if you ever forget it, come back to this. You are a rare empath chosen one, not because you're perfect, but because you were willing to feel what others refused to. You didn't numb. You didn't shut down. Even when it hurt like hell, you stayed open. And that openness is not your scar. It's your signature. It's your sacred role. So rise. Not as someone seeking to be saved, but as someone who finally knows they were born to be the sanctuary. And the world? It's waiting for you to step through that final door. Go, walk it, and never apologize again.